In Kenya, 76% of people have access to electricity.
How would you say the equation for energy pricing looks like?
The prices that change depending on the category with which you're in. Commercial and industrial customers have not only left the country, they have also decided to develop their own power plants.
What are your thoughts about implementing nuclear energy?
Nuclear energy, I can say the energy of the future. It's very clear.
Welcome to this episode of the Executive Review Podcast. Today I'm joined by Amkoa Likoko, an expert in economics and energy, and we'll be having a good conversation. But before that, allow me to introduce him to the show. Welcome, Amkoa Likoko.
Thank you very much, Rick.
It's a privilege and honor to have you at the Executive Review Podcast.
I've been looking forward to having this conversation.
Thank you. It's going to be a good one. And just to kick us off, I'll get you through some quick-fire questions, and then we'll get into the topic of the day.
Okay.
So the first question, will you choose Ronaldo or Messi? Ronaldo. I thought you'd say Messi because I've seen you at Buenos Aires, and you know those people love tango and...
I love Messi.
Yeah.
But I resonate more with Ronaldo. Yeah, and
even after visiting his city, Messi's city, you won't choose Messi.
My colleagues will be very mad at this situation. But we all have our preferences.
Yeah.
Messi is a good player. I cannot even exhaust his qualities. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I resonate more with my guy
Peter Drury says that it is hard to resist the supposition that he rendered himself the greatest of all, or the greatest of all times after winning the World Cup of 2022.
Yeah.
But how was Argentina? I know you visited Argentina.
Argentina is a really beautiful country. Mm-hmm. I saw the impact of Messi on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. The bread you take, the soda can you have, the face of Messi is everywhere.
Messi is everywhere.
His impact is huge. It's a very beautiful country. Mm-hmm. Very huge, very wide, very beautiful people. A lot of beef eating in that country.
It's barbecue.
I was shocked. I thought we love nyama choma.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see a country that loves nyama choma more than us.
Yeah.
But it makes more sense because they are one of the largest beef exporters in the world. Mm-hmm. But it was a beautiful country in general.
Yeah, but you also love football generally.
Very much. Very
much. Thank you. Karl Marx or Adam Smith? Now, these are economists.
Adam Smith.
There's a book by Adam Smith called The Wealth of Nations, which I think is the Bible of all economists.
Sure.
I have one in my house, and every time I read it, I've never finished it. It's a 5-volume book. It's a big one. And Karl Marx, I think, is known largely for a very small book he wrote. It's called The Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
You've read it, huh?
Yes, I've read it. I resonate more with Adam Smith because I think most of the policies, economic policies, have a foundational aspect from him.
Wow. Yeah. Equity or debt? How would you finance your big investments?
Debt because it's cheaper than equity. I think you understand, especially in economies like Africa, those like Kenya, for example. The cost of equity is normally very high. Mm-hmm. The return on investments is normally very high, ranges from 18 to 21% in the energy sector. That's quite huge.
It's quite huge.
So most projects, even in the energy sector, are financed using debt. So 70% debt, 30% equity. That's the ratio I would adopt.
Yeah. Well, lately you've been traveling a bit. I've seen you in Madagascar and also in Addis. Will you choose Madagascar or Argentina as a tourist destination?
That's a tricky one. All of them have their beautiful aspects, one unique to the other. Mm-hmm. But out of choice, I will choose Argentina. Mm-hmm. I did not exhaust that country. That's what I will say.
You would want to visit again?
I would want to visit it again. Yes. Argentina would be also more preferable to me because I would love to see, it's very close to Uruguay. It's a country I'm really interested in visiting. So I'll be killing two birds with one stone.
You know, Uruguay is the country that made Ghana not to make it past quarters in 2010 World Cup. We know all that.
Africans hate Uruguay for that.
We all know that's a Samoa Gyan moment. And against Uruguay. And maybe for that, I would say, Uruguay, we love you, but we have some feelings.
even the Uruguayans know. Yeah. They know that Africans Africa has some issues with
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 them.
Uruguay,
Yeah.
but it's a very beautiful country. They have this thing called mate. I don't know if
Mate.
you've heard of mate. It's like their chai.
Yeah.
They drink it wherever they go.
Yeah.
It's very common in South America, so
Yeah.
it's very beautiful to go to those
We've
countries.
had some South American cuisine in Houston, which Houston, Texas also has quite a big community. People from Latin America who come there to do business, and we've had some cuisine there in our previous visits with some of my colleagues. Yeah, I can relate to that. And lastly, which form of energy between hydro and geothermal do you think is the future?
Well, that's a difficult question. Contextually, are you talking about Africa? Are you talking about Kenya? Are you talking
I'm
about...
talking about Kenya.
Okay, for Kenya, Kenya has very huge untapped geothermal resources. So I would give it more preference with regard to it being the future, the energy of the future. Of course,
Yeah.
we have 10,000 megawatts of untapped energy
Untapped energy. That's geothermal.
in
the Rift Valley only.
Region. You can imagine how big that is. So hydro is good, but it dwarfs in comparison of geothermal power. You cannot compare those two in terms of potential here in the country. Yeah. So geothermal, I probably will get the first preference.
Yeah, thank you. And talking about geothermal and hydro, today's conversation, Amkoa Likoko, is about economics of energy pricing. Before we dive deep into this, I'll just want you maybe to help us understand what is your academic and professional background.
Thank you very much. I'm a graduate of economics and statistics. I got a degree in Egerton University. I'm currently pursuing my master's in Strathmore University, and I'm hopefully also going to pursue my second master's in finance in the University of Nairobi. With regard to my professional career, I was fortunate enough to begin internship at the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. I used to work at the Economic Regulation Department of that authority, and as fortunate to have it, I rose from being an intern all the way to becoming a pricing analyst. I used to price the energy, electricity and petroleum prices in the country. So I used to have a team which we used to do those kind of aspects, and we did that for quite some time before I got another opportunity to get into global consulting in the energy sector, and that's where I've been for the past 5 years. I work for GME Global. GME Global is based in Argentina and Uruguay, capital, headquartered there. But it has other offices, one in Kenya, one in South Africa, one in Chile, one in North America, and we have other people in other parts of the world in the consultancy business. So our firm basically handles consulting on energy sector issues. We do energy planning, energy pricing, regulations, policy, mini grid development, new technologies like green hydrogen, electric mobility, carbon financing. All those aspects are well captured within what our consultancy firm does.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a beautiful curriculum vitae for yourself.
Thank you.
I think you are doing very well for yourself
Thank you.
for the energy sector
Thank you.
as an economist. And you've also mentioned that you want to pursue further your career, a path in finance a bit. But I believe finance is a branch of economics.
They are highly interconnected.
Yeah. And also you have both local and global experience as a consultant.
Yes.
You've just spoken about
that
your
aspect,
experience.
We do projects all across the globe. Currently, we have projects in Ethiopia, projects in Kenya, projects in Mozambique, projects in Burkina Faso, and other projects in South America. So it's always a shifting environment with us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's get to Kenya and get this conversation about Kenya for a little bit, because most of our viewers would want to look at local problems and how we can be able to address ourselves to them. Sure. But fast forward, what energy sources are we having in Kenya, and what is the cost of having energy in our houses?
That's a very interesting question. So I'll provide the sources in three key forms. We have what we call baseload energy. Baseload energy sources are sources from power plants which can run all through the day. They don't go from 0 to 100 real quick. So we're talking about geothermal power, hydropower, bioenergy. Those are the key baseload sources that we have, as well as thermal power. Those ones from diesel, kerosene, and heavy fuel oil. And on intermittent sources, I think you've heard of solar and wind power. These are sources which can go from 0 to 100 real quick. So ideally, you can have wind right now, and in the next 5 seconds, you don't have it, isn't it? You can have solar for 3 or 4 hours during the morning, and
then you don't have it.
in the evening, you don't have it, isn't it? So that is what
Even
called.
hydro is affected by water volumes in the rivers.
It does. It is affected, but we have dams and storage facilities. So the effect has in a way been
regulated.
Been regulated.
Yeah.
But for solar and wind, they don't. Most of them do not come with storage.
Yeah.
If they came with storage, we would have assumed that they're still.
Well, that's why we'll
very
have water reservoirs
Yeah.
around hydro power
Yes.
plants.
So there's 7 Fox dams.
Yeah.
You can see a lot of reservoirs.
Yeah.
In those places, it's because we can be able to, at least they regulate the flow of water, and you can be able to estimate the amount of power you're going to get from a water source.
Yeah.
But solar and wind, the intermittent nature at times is a challenge. So that's why I'm calling them intermittent. But you also have imports. Kenya has been recently importing power from Ethiopia, Uganda, and Tanzania. For Ethiopia, it's a one-way agreement where Ethiopia gives us power, but for Uganda and Tanzania, we exchange depending on the deficits that the country has. So that's the situation with regard to the energy sources. The largest source we have right now is geothermal power.
Geothermal.
It has
about how
around
many megawatts?
940
megawatts.
megawatts.
Out of a potential of 10,000 megawatts.
Yes, out of the potential of 10,000 megawatts, we have 943 megawatts operating, and it also contributes the largest percentage of energy to the system, around 40%. The second one is hydropower, around 800 megawatts. Then we have thermal at around 500. Then we have solar. We have wind and solar, 436 and 214 megawatts in the sector. Then we have bioenergy. It's a bit low.
It's a bit low.
That end. But importation has also taken a very huge chunk of late, because the demand of the country is constantly increasing.
Yeah.
And so
we see a lot of demand in terms of industrializing the country, and having data centers being put up, having manufacturing as a major sector now in the next vision 2030, and energy has always been a setback.
Kenya is industrializing very fast. So you see what you mentioned, for example, data centers. They're coming up, and they're coming up in numbers. We have electric vehicles. Their demand has increased like 100-fold between the last 6 months and the previous and the prior 6 months that before now. We see aggressive electrification efforts by Kenya Power. You know, every year Kenya Power is connecting over 400,000 customers to the national grid. You can imagine the kind of demand that comes from that.
Yeah.
So if you look at the latest Energy and Petroleum Statistics report, it was released some years ago. It was released this year. Sorry. It mentions that commercial and industrial consumers they consume about 49% of the total power produced in the country. Then we have small commercial, around 9%. Then we have domestic customers, that is the likes of me and you and our households, consuming around 32%. So the demand is constantly increasing. Yeah.
I want you to help us look at the cost versus scarcity balance. There's a cost to having continuous supply of energy in the country.
There is.
And there's a scarcity also in terms of resources to upscale as a nation.
Yeah.
We also the president of Ethiopia launching the The
Grand Dam, yeah. I
The
know.
Grand Falls Dam.
Yeah.
Is it the Grand?
It's the Grand Falls Dam.
The Grand Falls Dam. And he spoke about the difficult side of financing that project. It actually took almost a decade to just implement it, partly because of finances. And that means energy infrastructure and the energy resource is an expensive kind of resource to deploy in a nation. Yet there is continuous need to have it in the country. So what is the cost of having energy supplied in a nation, and what scarcity versus demand choices must we make as a nation?
I think, as you've rightly put it, energy infrastructure is very important. And at some point, the nation has to make sure that energy security is at the top of the list, even before you go into cost. You'd rather have power than not have any power at all.
Yes.
That's normally the first principle. So if you look at the build-up to the energy costs, you have to look at the power plants, for example.
Yeah.
The power plants have something called the levelized cost of electricity. Ideally, the cost that's supposed to make them generate the power, operate the power plants, and also get a reasonable return on the investments you get. That forms what you call part of the base tariff in a normal system. So this base tariff is normally why the regulator adds some things we call pass-through costs. So every single month, the tariff is adjusted based on the changes in foreign exchange fluctuation, inflation adjustments, and fuel cost charges. Remember, we have thermal power plants in our system, and it uses kerosene and heavy fuel oil, so the costs constantly affect the total tariff build-up. Then we have taxes and levies. So we have the ERC levy, we have the Rural Electrification Program levy, we have the Water Resource Management Authority levy. All of those add to the overall cost of the tariff. So you find at the end of the day, the cost build-up has to be able to, number one, ensure that the generators of these power plants are able to receive a reasonable return on the investments. And they're also, the transmission and distribution systems, Ketraco and Kenya Power, are able to operate their systems efficiently. And also these levies are catered for. We also have value-added tax that comes within this system. So for the consumer, we might see it as a lot of taxes, but the government or the regulators put in place mechanisms to make sure that consumers are able to pay in accordance to their capacity. So we have different consumer categories paying different prices. You'll find that ule mama mboga, the mama mboga that we have, or the people living in one bedrooms or single houses, they are in the lifeline tariff category. Lifeline tariff category basically is people who are paying for a less tariff based on a low consumption. So 0 to 30, if you consume 0 to 30 units per month for 3 months, you're in the lifeline tariff category. If you consume 30 to 100 kilowatts or 30 units, 30 to 100 units per month, you are in a domestic category, consumer category 1. Then above 100 units, you're in a different category. The prices that change depending on the category with which you're in. So that's the way the system balances itself out. And the regulator is always tasked to make sure that every stakeholder is satisfied. In a way with the prices that are provided. And they might not always be satisfied. The consumer will complain. Kenya Power will complain. Ketraco will complain. But they are supposed to make sure that that system balances itself efficiently.
Thank you. You've helped us to look at how the build-up of the various components
for sure
affect the eventual cost of putting up infrastructure and also the pricing of power that is distributed to the households and even industries.
For sure.
But I just want us to again go to the mathematical side of the equation. We all know of the equation y is equals to mx plus c. I think if you can go back to algebra. But then when you have multiple scenarios We have multilinear equations that can even be solved simultaneously. Others will use matrices to predict what will happen if something happens. For example, what will happen if we don't have sufficient supply from local sources of energy. And also we've looked at a possible scenario whereby we don't have sufficient supply and demand continues growing, and the infrastructure is also getting dilapidated in a way.
For sure.
How would you say the equation for energy pricing looks like?
Now, that's a very interesting aspect. Now, I'll try to go back a little bit. The regulator, which is EPRA, is expected after every 3 years to do something called revenue requirements for the system. Basically, the revenue requirement is what do we need for the system to be efficiently sufficient for the next 3 years as we calculate the base tariff. So they will look at the cost of generation, the cost of transmission, the cost of distribution, the cost of retail supply to the end customers. And from there, they will now develop these revenue requirements. So basically, the base tariff that I mentioned is a build-up of that revenue requirement. But then, as you mentioned, there are some things that happen. It's not always a linear equation. You might find situations where, for example, the cost of fuel has increased because of, let's say, the Iran war that is currently happening. And we still depend highly on thermal sources of power to be able to meet our peak demand. So in such situations, you see that there are adjustments that have to be made to the existing tariff. And that is what we call the pass-through costs. So in case the cost of crude oil per barrel increases from 60 to 120 USD per barrel, then that effect, of course, we will have to pay as consumers through the pass-through costs. There are days when we have drought in the country, and when there is drought in the country, the hydropower sources cannot be run at sufficient capacity. So in such situations, we might be forced to either import more energy or use the thermal sources again to give us the energy. When we do that, then the cost might increase because now we are using thermal at high capacity, and the fuel itself becomes very, very expensive. So there are pass-through costs that are put to be able to shield the system from these changes and on fluctuations in the market. So the fuel energy cost looks at fuel. The foreign exchange fluctuation adjustment cost looks at the changes in forex. Remember Kenya Power and KenGen. KenGen produces is one of the largest producers of energy in the country, and Kenya Power is our national distributor. They have loans that are foreign currency denominated. So they have to pay these loans. And even the power purchase agreements that they have with most power plants are foreign currency denominated. So we have to always have an impact on the foreign exchange rate fluctuation adjustments. Then you also have inflation. The cost of things constantly keep rising up. So that adjustment has to be considered when the pricing takes place. So those are the kind of dynamics that constantly shift the pricing of electricity in our country.
Wow, there are quite a number of issues that affect energy pricing in Kenya. And I think Kenya is just a case for Africa and many other countries. And maybe I'll just want also to look at the multiplier effect of constant fluctuations of energy prices. What is the general effect of having fluctuations of energy prices?
I think for any market to be considered doing well, the cost of doing business should be predictable, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You should be able to predict that it will cost me to move my goods from the port
A to point B
to my place at this cost. But if the energy prices are fluctuating, you won't know what is the requirement to run your plant when you are in manufacturing business.
That's the thing. And as I mentioned, if you look at the energy consumption in the country, the manufacturing and the manufacturing industries and the commercial industries consume a lot of power. 49% of the power is consumed by them. So you can imagine what an effect on the manufacturing, on the cost of energy will do to their production, and what it will do to us, the consumers who consume their products. So it's going to be a vicious cycle in which the price of electricity is high, the cost of production is high, the cost of production is high, the cost to the consumer is high, and that becomes challenging for the economy. Remember, energy is an enabler of a lot of things. So if it's not cost effective, a lot of people will suffer.
You've spoken about regulation, and let's just have an up-close look at how regulation, proper regulation, can help to shape up the energy sector and also the economy in a positive way. Regulation done right.
Yeah, I think regulation is at the heart of everything, not only in energy, in business, in industries, in the quality of products we get. There are things that regulations have the ability to do. And so if we do not have a good regulatory environment, especially for the energy sector, things will go haywire. There is a specific aspect that, for example, EPRA, a specific role that it plays to ensure that the stakeholders are satisfied, and you're balancing the needs of all the stakeholders. So that's why if you were to leave like Kenya Power to decide on the cost of electricity, they would determine it based on a profit maximization pattern. But EPRA will say, no, we need to have a price that's efficient and sufficient for you, and also does not affect the consumers. Our regulator has done a very good job in ensuring that the pricing mechanisms in the energy sector remain very efficient
and predictable.
How do they ensure these things take place? On aspects of tariff, there are benchmarks that the regulator has. So you'll see that there is a specific return on investment that is supposed to be there. There's a specific weighted average cost of capital. There's a specific gearing ratio with regard to debt and equity. There's a specific capacity factor that plants are supposed to provide. You get, so you're pricing not based on things that are generic. There are conditions that you have to meet in the country, and such things make it easy for the system to work efficiently.
Well, looking again at these factors that affect pricing, because that also, as a regulator, is making sure the space is safe for everyone and is fair.
For sure.
And also is addressing the need for growth in the sector.
For sure.
There's three constants that are always out there in the public: the availability, affordability, and accessibility of energy. What will you say needs to be in the reform pipeline to make sure that energy in Kenya is available, accessible, and affordable to the user?
That's a very good question. I will start with accessibility, because I believe everyone has a right to a decent way of life, and accessibility to me is very important. Why am I saying this? Because in Kenya, 76% of people have access to electricity. That means 24% of people
excluded,
do not have access to electricity. So efforts have to be made.
They are being knocked out of civilization.
Yes. So efforts have to be made to ensure that the 24%
is
have access to electricity. And in that specific regard, the country is making efforts to ensure that access is made even to the last to this last mile consumers, especially who mostly reside
in the rural
areas.
Setting,
so you see Kenya Power doing aggressive electrification, but we have also things called mini grids and solar home systems which operate in those areas. Their costs might be a bit high, but they bring electricity to these people regardless. So those are one of the things that have to be looked at. Number one, let's first focus on access, isn't it?
Yes.
Number two, on the issue of affordability, there are aspects that have to be looked at. For example, we have to begin at the value chain of electricity costing. If we have an expensive power plant running, the cost of electricity is going to trickle down to the consumer, isn't it? So we have to look at the way we review and approve power purchase agreements. So like wind power plants, solar power plants, geothermal power plants, those power plants, we have to have a tariff for them that is reasonable enough that is not going to affect the consumer. So we have to think about it. The country has something called the Renewable Energy Auctions Policy. Basically, we are looking at competitive power procurement. It is not yet there, but once it's in place, they're going to make sure that solar and wind and other renewable energy sources are approved only based on a very competitive system, so that we get the most affordable and the most reasonable price. Now, once that system has been sorted out, we now need to look at the cost to review the system losses in our country. Currently, 22% of the energy that is produced is lost.
It's lost.
Is lost.
How is it lost?
They have technical losses and they have commercial losses.
Yeah.
So technical losses, as power goes through the transmission system or as power goes through the distribution system, power can be lost.
Yeah.
It's very natural. Sometimes you can't even control it.
Yeah.
But then there are things that can be controlled. Illegal connections, illegal metering, theft. Those are part of the commercial losses, and they really affect the cost of electricity in a way. So if we reduce these losses from the current 22% to the benchmark that EPRA has given at 16.5%, we'll significantly save on the cost of electricity. So I think those should be the areas of focus. We focus on very competitive procurement for power plants, and we also focus on reduction of the costs of this system losses that the country has constantly been getting.
Okay.
But that needs a lot of investment also in infrastructure, because the transmission and distribution infrastructure are very important for the sector, and if they're dilapidated, then you'll have losses on the technical side.
On the technical side,
which can be prevented.
Yeah.
And you don't.
We should be able to prevent the losses.
We should be able to prevent the losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have a dilapidated system, then that also becomes a huge challenge.
Okay.
But Kenya Power should also invest in smart meters and effective billing mechanisms to ensure that these losses, which you can prevent, unmetered connections, illegal connections, those kind of things, do not affect the system, because we are the ones who pay for that, for those losses.
There's always a cost for the losses made.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Amkoa Likoko, you are an economist in the energy sector, and you have really helped us to see the need for development of sustainable energy in Kenya. But at the same time, we have a lot of commercial outcry from the industries. You've heard of companies leaving Kenya because it is too expensive to run business in Kenya. The cost of doing business in Kenya is very high, and one of the factors that contribute to a high cost of doing business is the cost of energy. How should we be able to balance between the commercial cost of having energy distributed versus the need to sustainably develop our energy systems? Because on one side, it costs money to develop our energy infrastructure
for sure.
and to have it distributed.
For sure.
And we also have the need to make sure that businesses are not over expensed as regards energy consumption.
That's true.
Yes.
It's a huge challenge in Africa.
Yes.
It's not just in Kenya.
Not just in Kenya.
But it is true that the cost of energy is one of the biggest factors for commercial and industrial customers. But I can also mention that the country is making efforts. The efforts that are being made by the country, there's something they introduced in 2017 called the time of use tariffs. Basically, these time of use tariffs, a developer or an industry is allowed to use electricity during the off-peak hours when it's not in demand, and they pay 50% of the cost. Instead of using it and paying 100%, it's 50% of the cost. So this time of use has saved a lot of commercial and industrial customers. The last I checked, based on the latest report by EPRA, 971 million shillings in savings from electricity payments have been saved through that. So that's one of the ways to be able to mitigate these mechanisms. Let's have time of use tariffs to be able to mitigate the costs for for these commercial and industrial customers. We need to look at reducing the cost of power production, the cost of power that's coming through the system. So through getting effective and cost-effective power plants that are at least affordable and reasonable for the market. That is going to save a lot on the pipeline. Commercial and industrial customers have not only left the country, they have also decided to develop their own power plants.
Yeah.
So right now, as I speak, we have captive power generation in the country. Captive means you're producing electricity for your own use.
For your own use.
For your own use. And it's at 630 megawatts.
Wow. That's almost close. That's when geothermal is at 900.
Yeah, that's 600.
That's 600. It's a big contribution.
So it's even a risk to a Kenya Power and the market in general that these people might leave if you do not do something.
Yeah.
But we have to go to the basics.
Yeah.
Solve system losses, reduce the cost of energy production based on the power plants that we approve during the power purchase agreements. That is going to solve the issues. Then probably let's take the renewable energy auctions policy and make it effective.
Yeah.
Probably that's also going to really improve the competition in that segment and reduce the cost of power. Yeah.
Now, Kenya has an ambitious plan to implement a nuclear power as a major source for the country. I think that the country is targeting about 5,000 megawatts from a nuclear power plant that has been proposed in Siaya County.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about implementing nuclear energy, and what role is it going to play in sorting out the deficit that you have in the country? And will it also be an option in reducing the level of import of power that you're having? Will it stabilize the grid?
Nuclear energy is the energy also, I can say, the energy of the future.
And it's the energy of the future. Is it clean energy?
Part of the energy of it. It's very clean.
It's very clean.
And if you look at countries like Germany, countries in Europe, even China,
the Netherlands,
they have huge nuclear power plants. The beauty of nuclear is
though you had some of these, especially EU countries, some of them saying they have a 10-20-year plan to leave, to exit nuclear as a source of energy. There's been politics around nuclear energy.
I think that discussion is difficult to have because number one, nuclear is not just energy.
It's not just energy.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Nuclear is
security.
Also geopolitical.
It's
very geopolitical.
Geopolitical.
And in such situations, you see there are countries which might want to leave it as it is, and other countries will want to develop it for their own reasons. That's why even in Kenya we have the Kenya Nuclear Energy Board.
Yeah.
Or the NUPEA, which is not the NUPEA, the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. The beauty of nuclear is its baseload.
Yeah.
Remember what I mentioned about baseload? It's available.
Yeah.
All through it can run very well. It's very cost effective. The challenge with nuclear is security. That's the dynamics we have to think about, because just the cost of maintaining a nuclear power plant and making sure that it sticks within the limits of what it's supposed to do.
It can be misused.
Is the greatest challenge.
Yeah.
But I think we are making efforts.
Yeah.
Kenya is making efforts.
But I think with sovereignty comes the responsibility to just make sure that whatever facilities you have, you are responsible enough to make sure it is providing security.
Yeah, but this one needs approvals. This one needs approvals. It wasn't just Kenya deciding that we need to have nuclear. I think there's a nuclear board.
It's a community of nations.
Yes, that have to come in and look into it.
Yeah.
Before the approvals come in and take time.
Yeah. Now, Amkoa Likoko, you are well traveled, especially on matters energy. You go to conferences and you also work for a global organization.
Yeah.
What lessons can Kenya learn from other countries in implementing its energy strategic plans for the future and making sure the country has accessibility to energy and the energy is distributed affordably and sustainably?
I think we just need to stick to what we, as a country, we need to make sure that what we have as a policy is implemented. If you look at countries like Namibia, which implemented the renewable energy auctions within a span of 2, 3, 4, 4 years very fast. Those are things that we as a country can be able to borrow. We just have a system that seriously works for the country. If you look at South Africa, they have very good agencies in place to handle renewable energy auctions. For Kenya, that's one of the things that we are lagging behind, because we developed a policy in 2021 for renewable energy auctions, and up to now, the policy has not been implemented, and that's a huge challenge. There's also a moratorium on power purchase agreements, which I was mentioning earlier, where the parliament put a freeze on approving new power purchase agreements or new developers into the system, and that affected new power plants coming into the grid. The freeze has been there for like 4 or 5 years. So if we just have a system that works, where approvals are done on time, where the regulator is able to do things independently, they can do things independently, but I still feel there's a lag between what other countries are doing and what we are doing.
But also, in the same breath, on matters pricing, what is the long-term effects of good pricing models on the welfare of a nation? Because, we began this conversation on the pricing side of energy.
For sure.
What should we consider moving into the future as regards welfare? You've spoken about the country making efforts to push connectivity from about 74% to 100%. Yeah. That is expected not to just be a connectivity, but also availability of energy.
For sure.
Because like for me, in the countryside I come from, we have connectivity to energy, but we are often in the blackout. So, and whenever we have light, again, the pricing is not really fair enough, because there's that feeling that what it costs to buy electricity versus what you get, there's no value for money. Maybe you can address we can address ourselves to these issues through your advice. What can we do to make sure that there is correlation between the welfare of a nation and the pricing of energy?
I think, as I mentioned, if you look at rural areas, they are sometimes highly disadvantaged with regard to the pricing aspect, especially if it's not the national grid, Kenya Power, which is taking part of them, or it's like, let's say, a mini grid or a solar home system. So that disadvantage is normally there at the very beginning, but it's important for it to take place so that we have at least national access. But what, as a country, we can do, and which I know we do, is if you look at the regulator, he has reliability indices. Reliability indices, we have system average interruption duration index, system average interruption frequency index, and customer average interruption duration index. These are not just indices. These indices basically look at the frequency of outages, the ways that these outages are solved, and the number of outages, let's say, a community or an individual is able to have. So these indices are reliability indices, which are given to Kenya Power to be able to make sure that they stick within the reliability indices. For mini-grids and standalone solar home systems, we have things like Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 electricity, which are based on ESMA and World Bank. So basically, you require mini-grids to provide at least Tier 4 of electricity, providing at least 3 or 4 hours of electricity per day, and having it at a certain level of reliability, and ensuring that the tariff is at least cost reflective of the system. But still, effort has to be made.
Effort has to be made. We all know of this great scientist, actually in physics, Albert Einstein. Einstein said, "Everything is energy, and that is all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get the reality. It can be no way. This is not philosophy. This is physics."
For sure.
What we have been discussing here about energy is not philosophy. It is physics.
It is physics.
It is civilization. It is life.
I agree with you.
And Amkoa Likoko, it's been a pleasure hosting you at the Executive Review Podcast, talking about economics of energy pricing and looking at the energy scenario in Africa, the various energy sources that we have in the country, the challenges we are going through in terms of connectivity, accessibility, and even affordability, and how it's impacting the economy when it comes to industrialization. The country is talking about big data and AI, and that cannot happen without the support of energy specialists like yourself. You've also given us global perspectives from your global explorations, and you have suggested local solutions that we can learn from other countries, which is something that is a good starting point in our energy conversation. It's been a pleasure hosting you at the Executive Review Podcast.
It's been a pleasure as well.
Thank you.